All right, it's that time. So for this session, we have Georgette Mayo, Mylynda Gill, and Alison Reynolds. So Georgette, take it away.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to. Oh, well, I'm here. I'll just figure it out in a minute. But anyway, my name is Georgette Mayo, and I'm a processing archivist. For the Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture, we partnered with Clemson University's Historical Preservation Program on a 2-year grant funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities, Preservation and Access, Education, Training, Funding, Opportunity. Wow, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Our project was known as the Johns Island Preservation Field School, which focused on researching and documenting late 19th and early 20th century public buildings and their role within the African American communities on Johns Island. Beginning in the summer of 2023, during the course of a 3-week program, historic preservation and history faculty, archivists, scholars, and local community educators taught 10 field school participants about the life in this community during the Jim Crow and Civil Rights era. Through hands-on learning, participants learned how to document and the physical fabric and cultural narratives associated with the historical buildings and landscapes on this low country island. So these are the various entities that we partnered with. And we set out a community call for participants. So this was for the first year. Avery's aim was to provide archival research instruction for multi-generational laypersons participants as they acquired additional information about the Moving Star Hall and progressive clubs, and that was in 2023. This is the call for the second year. So this is the Progressive Club. In 2024, another group of 10 students explored the histories of the Hebron Presbyterian Church, also known as the Hebron St. Francis Senior Center, and the Promised Land School. And you can see through photographs what the school used to look like, the Promised Land School, and now with the one with the on the land of the Promised Land School, the building with the awnings is now a Mexican restaurant. Part of the College of Charleston, the Avery Research Center is set in the former school known as the Avery Normal Institute, 1865 to 1954. The structure was reestablished in 1990 as an archival repository, small museum, and cultural center for public programming. The center's archives holds the manuscript collections of the Johns Island natives, Esau Jenkins, along with Septima Poinsett Clark and her cousin Bernice Robinson, who together established the citizenship schools at the Progressive Club. And I'll go back to the Progressive Club. This is what remains, unfortunately, of the Progressive Club. We implored our students to learn more about the Moving Star Hall and the Progressive Club and those who create the Citizenship School for the adult education for literacy testing to acquire voter registration. They delved into the history and retentions of Johns Island and the various Gullah Geechee communities of the South Carolina Low Country. The center's archives also holds brief collections on the Hebron Center and the Promised Land Elementary, where the school where the most noted teacher, Septima Point Clark, initially taught upon graduation from the Avery Normal Institute in 1916. So I'll go back to that. Prior to researching in our archives, the students learn about the inner workings of the Avery Research Center. This included talks about the challenges to working within a historic building, our archival collections, and of high interest, and how we perform outreach, public programming, and exhibitions to numerous local entities and the various collaborations, partnerships like ours with Clemson's Historic Preservation Program. The importance of interpretation at diverse cultural institutions was also stressed. We called our program segment Troubling the Archives, where we worked with some students who had never been inside an archive or conducted research with primary source documents. As part of creating their story maps, our students spent several days learning archival research techniques and perusing various documents and photographs as it related to their thesis and final project. A Sea Island LibGuide was created to assist students to identify collections pertaining to the people and the region. We challenged the students to ask questions and dig deeper for answers that might not have been evident in one location, namely the Avery Archives. We consider the Johns Island Preservation Field School a holistic approach to archival and interpretation education, with providing hands-on training in historic preservation documentation, archival research methods, and responsible community engagement. This program extends the boundaries of what public history extends the boundaries of public history, literally making history truly public. And I'll go over the first slide that you saw with being in the archives. This is our manager of archival services, Aisha Heichel. And this is a picture on our right of our auditorium, which we hold a lot of our public programming. And this is Erica Veal, who is our interpretation coordinator. And she's going through our explaining exhibits in our small museum. And this is me in the orange dress, and we're in our traditional classroom when it was known as the Avery Normal Institute. And here's some of the students that participated in the program. Again, Erica Veal inside our archives, our what we call our Phyllis Wheatley Literary and Social Club Reading Room, which is actual a club that is still in existence today. Over 100, the club is really over 100 years old, but this is where researchers come to look at our archival collections and our closed stack library books. And this is another one of our participants, and this is behind her is a portrait of Phyllis Wheatley. And the students, for each year, were tasked to do a presentation at a local conference. And so this is one of the participants that took part in the presentation. And this is our last slide, and these are the four that was in the year of round of 2023. And this is the backdrop. They're looking at the backdrop of when you first come into Avery. This is what you will see in our hallway. And to me, this actual program was, brought me a lot of joy, because I love being able to explain archives to people and to introduce them to archives and to help them find what they think they're looking for in regards to their research. So Thank you. And I can make myself visible. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. It is still morning. I'm Mylynda Gill. I am the next presenter, so I'm just getting my slideshow up here now. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so as already stated, my name is Mylynda Gill, and today I'm going to be talking about the joy of learning and teaching with special collections and archival materials. I am the Special Collections Librarian and College Archivist at the College of Coastal Georgia. So just a little bit of background information for me quickly. I always like hearing different librarians and archivists' educational backgrounds personally because we have such a diverse group, and it's always fun to hear like what people studied while they were in school personally. So I have 2 bachelor's degrees in English and psychology, and I got my master's in library science and information studies with archives concentration at Simmons College, now known as Simmons University. So my introduction to the archives and special collections field was when my college English class went to the Keene State College Archives and Special Collections to learn about primary sources related to World War II that they had within their collections. The particular collection I was introduced to during this class session was the Stowe family letter collection. And during the class session, we had to transcribe love letters that this collection was made out of between a husband and wife while he was stationed through basic training through when he was stationed overseas in Europe during World War II. So while the rest of my classmates kind of struggled with the cursive handwriting and the transcription of the letters, I had 2 letters completed by the end of the class period. So the college archivist, Rodney O'Mean, approached me after class and he offered me a job because I could read the cursive handwriting. And that's how I got introduced to the field. That was in the fall of 2013. Unfortunately, I was not able to actually start working for him right away because the financial aid office had rules about how many jobs you could have on campus. So I got to start in the spring of 2014. I learned how to process collections, and I assisted our college archivist when he taught other primary source literacy class sessions. And I did this through the spring of 2014 through the spring of 2016. However, I wasn't quite sure if this was a fluke. Like, did I really want to do this for my career? I wanted to make sure. So because I got my English degree, we had an internship requirement. So I reached out to the college archivist at Dartmouth College because he and I had been at a panel at a conference the previous year. And I asked him if he had any internship possibilities, and he said yes. So I went and worked with him during the spring semester of 2016. I assisted him with teaching primary source literacy classes as well. And I confirmed that, yes, this is what I wanted to do for my career. This is what I wanted to keep learning about. And I just had a wonderful time, and I've been in the field ever since. It was in the spring of 2016, I got my official acceptance into Simmons College. They offered me a fantastic scholarship with the requirement of going full-time. So I took classes at the Celeste West campus and online, and I graduated in the spring of 2018. And then my career started off, as I'm sure many of our careers started off, as being an archivist and librarians. I had a lot in a short period of time due to either contract work or low pay, and I found better opportunities so I could kind of afford living. But each job offered me a new learning experience. Some of them I got to teach in as well, such as at the New Hampshire Historical Society. I held a few different workshops for various groups in order to kind of show off different parts of our collection. So during this time frame, I worked at the New Hampshire Public Radio. I worked at the Keene State College. I already mentioned the New Hampshire Historical Society, and I also worked at the Brian Lang Archives in Camden County. But in January 2014 is when I got my position here at the College of Coastal Georgia, and I have been very happy here, and I'm looking forward to being here for many more years to come. So timeline-wise, so far at the College of Coastal Georgia, back in 2024, I taught several information literacy one-off sessions, and I also did a couple of archive-based, but they were multiple classes. I physically organized the entire archives and special collection rooms because it was a mess. To say the least. There were college archive materials in the special collections rooms. There were special collections materials in the college archives room. So I had to spend 2024 just getting everything physically organized, getting all the newspapers together, all the photographs together, all bound materials together. So that's how I spent a good part of 2024. And I also started attending library and college events, getting the word out there that, hey, there is an official college archivist now. Is there anything I can do? Just meeting people. And I also hosted a couple of college archive related events as well, because it was the 60th anniversary of classes at our institution here at the Brunswick campus. So I made sure to make a big scene about that and get people involved with the college archives that way. In 2025, at least so far, I have continued teaching information literacy and archive class sessions. I have started actually processing the college archive collections and creating their corresponding finding aids. And earlier in the spring semester, I co-led a lecture on the college archives and our work with the American General Studies program for the Alumni Association. So what does this have to do with joy? Well, last spring, when I taught the American General Studies 3000s class, they had to come in and work with the newspaper collection, and they were using the newspapers to create web pages as their assignment on the history of the college. They kept having to come back. I also showed them the yearbooks and the course catalogs at that point in time, and some of them incorporated those materials into their webpage assignments as well. However, when that project wrapped up, one of the students in that class reached out to me, and she asked if I had any opportunities available for students, because she really found the class fascinating and she had never known about archives before, and she was interested in learning more. I let her know that unfortunately, and it's still the case, I only had volunteer positions available, and she didn't care about that. So she came and volunteered with me throughout the entire summer, and she dropped in a couple times as well during the fall semester. And I'm happy to report that she actually graduated in December 2024, and she is now in grad school pursuing her degree to become an archivist now. So this was really a full circle journey for me, because I got introduced to the world of archives by learning about it by my undergraduate class, going to the college archives and being exposed that way. And now, because I have become an archivist and a professor and teacher, I got to teach undergraduate students about archives and special collections, and it has now inspired one of my undergraduate students to pursue a job in the archival field. So that was really, so when I got the proposal email back earlier in the spring about what is your joy in the world of archives, I was like, I know what I'm going to talk about, or what I would like to present about, because really this had just happened in a like full circle movement, and it was just like wonderful and fantastic. And that's us together on her graduation day. As you can see, we're just both so happy and so proud of her, and she's doing really well, and she already has a part-time library job so while she's in grad school to keep gaining experience as well. So I wanted to include some links, and if anybody is interested, I will throw my email into the chat. I'm happy to pass along this presentation. If anybody would like to know more about the Stoff Letters collection, those love letters from World War II, or more about what I'm doing here at the College of Coastal Archives and Special Collections, and if anybody would like to connect professionally, my LinkedIn profile link is in there as well, though if you type in Mylynda Gill, I'm the only one that is Mylynda Gill on LinkedIn at the moment. So, and also just a quick credit slide. Photos are by me, my past archivist, and Tiffany King, photographer here at Coastal. I have received permission to use the photographs however I need to, and I did create this slideshow in Canva, and credit is there as well. And thank you for listening, everybody. I'll be happy to answer questions after the end of our next presentation.
Great. So I am next. Just give me a second to share a PowerPoint. Okay. Great. Hello, I'm Alison Reynolds. I am the Research Services Instruction Archivist and also the Rare Books and Science Fiction Special Collections Curator at Georgia Tech. The title of my presentation is, Do You Have Any Collections About Anger? Thinking Outside the Box with Archival Instruction. And essentially what this is about is thinking about teaching on a topic that maybe doesn't align with a specific collection or a topic, but more of an abstract or theoretical concept. I think it's really easy to say somebody wants to learn about visual analysis of science fiction magazines, to just say, great, I will pull some magazines, or let's look at student life in the 1970s. Let's pull some student newspapers. But one semester, an instructor emailed me and said, I'm teaching a class about anger. I want to bring them to the archives. What can I do? So that was what prompted me to think about this as a talk. So when I started thinking about what brings me joy in my job, the first thing I think about is an instruction session that goes well. So by this, I mean a class where the students are engaged with archival materials, asking questions, talking to each other, maybe laughing, finding something in a document they can connect with, and hopefully tell their friends about later. It's especially rewarding when I'm trying something new, a new activity, a new subject, new collection materials, when I'm a little nervous or uncertain about how it's going to go, and the session turns out to be great. That's what brings me joy. And I found that some of my best collaborations have been from ideas that seemed a little bit outside of the box. I think part of the fun and challenge of doing archival instruction is finding items in your collections that will engage students, align with the topics and themes of the course, and meet the instructor's learning objectives. So it can be easy when the course topics directly align with collecting areas, but what do you do when the instructor approaches you about a session around a concept, theory, or topic that doesn't really correlate to any collections? So again, instruction sessions centering around some of these subjective concepts like angry rhetoric and a theoretical framework like communal writing practices have been some of my favorite classes. So this is the best clip art Microsoft has about people being angry. So it started in fall of 2022 semester when I received an email from our first year writing instructor explaining she was teaching a course on the theme of angry rhetoric. The course was exploring how anger is used as a rhetorical device, its effectiveness and appropriateness in different contexts. And she wanted to know if we had anything in the archives with examples of people being angry in a public place, particularly, that she could use with her class to both give them awareness about the archives and get them to examine primary source documents. So I read this email and my initial gut reaction was, this is going to be really hard. We don't collect anger. We don't have anything really about anger tied to emotions, but really just a split second later, I was like, I can make this work. I'm going to figure this out. So I started thinking about collections, brainstorming events or instances or topics in the collection that I knew would be emotionally charged or where people might have been angry for some reason and might have written it out somewhere. And I did have the benefit of having been teaching with these collections for about 4 years at this point, so I was pretty familiar with a lot of what we had. So I made a long list of possibilities, possible topics. I started doing some research, pulled a bunch of documents, and narrowed it down to 5 documents. And it was actually really helpful because they ended up spanning 100 years from about 1915 to 2014 so that we could look at differences in anger over time. So I have a slide with some of the examples that I pulled. The first on the left is an editorial from 1915 during the Fulton Bag and Cotton Mill strike in Atlanta. That was criticizing union supporters. They talked about calling them anarchists and a little bit angry about unions, basically. On the right, there is a student newspaper article about some riots that happened on campus in 1955 for the 1956 Sugar Bowl, which is a whole interesting story I taught with before. Also, some editorials illustrating rivalry between 2 student publications in the 1950s. And the next slide, I have Techwood Homes was a public housing development in Midtown Atlanta that they tore down in the early 90s in preparation for the 1996 Olympics. And you can imagine a lot of people weren't happy about losing their homes. So we had some newspaper articles about that. And then my personal favorite on the right, this was a editorial from a student criticizing grammar Nazis. And I did warn the instructor, I was like, there's a lot of profanity through this whole article. Is that okay? Just in case. I figured she wouldn't care. And she said, actually, my dissertation, part of it dealt with profanity as a rhetorical device. So I love this. Let's do it. And I think the students really resonated with that. So I had these 5 items. It was a 50-minute class. So the students broke out into 5 groups and they did a document analysis of each item, 1 per group. I gave them some question prompts, which they discussed in these groups and shared out. I repeated this for 3 different sections in 1 day. And here's my question prompts if you want to see the questions I asked them. But I did this 3 times in 1 day. They prompted rich discussions, some things I hadn't even planned, including some gender associations with anger, because that editorial with about the grammar Nazis was just signed by the editor. And I printed out who it was on the title page, but they assumed it was a male author and it was actually a woman author. So we have to think about how we connect angry rhetoric and gender a little bit too. It changes in language over time used to convey anger, how anger in public discourse appears differently over time depending on the medium and audience. So the instructor really raved about the workshops. She ended up teaching it 3 more semesters and told her other classes, this is my favorite workshop of the year. She had a class that was 75 minutes later on, so I just added a couple of items per group. So we just had a little more time to do an analysis on multiple items, and it worked really, really well. She ended up teaching an upper level writing course in fall 2024, so we didn't do this, but she became a long-term partner. We came up with a new activity for her upper level writing class and are still working together now. So I consider this continued relationship to be a success that I often talk about with other instructors when I'm promoting archival instruction. Thinking about, so I do an orientation with a lot of the first-year writing instructors every year, and I use this as an example of maybe what you are teaching doesn't align with our collecting areas, but there are still ways we can integrate archives into that. So last fall, someone was like, I'm teaching a class about comedic rhetoric. It sounds a lot like what you do with angry rhetoric. Can I bring my class? So I did the exact same thing, just substituted examples of humor and writing over time for the angry ones. So the next example I have is communal writing. So since then, I have been asked several times by faculty about incorporating other theoretical concepts or broad topics into instruction. So last spring semester, an instructor was teaching a class about communal writing, a whole class. I don't know what that is. I had to Google it and do a little bit of research about theories surrounding that. And I met with her, and what she was asking for, I wasn't sure we could actually do in the archives, but I thought I'm going to make this work. So I did the research, found out they were interpreting this very broadly in terms of writing that either has an ambiguous origin, maybe multiple authors contributed to it over time, maybe it's been copied, is it plagiarism, is it fair use? And they were also using things like memes, internet memes, and how they get changed over time, or reaction videos that people do online where they have a video and then they show them reacting to it, and kind of issues of ownership with that. So with all that in mind, thinking broadly, I pulled a few items from our archives. It felt very outside the box, and I was very nervous about how it was going to turn out, more nervous than any class I'd ever done before. But I did find a lot of collections spanning a lot of our areas. The Georgia Tech song collection here, circa 1996. What was really interesting about this is that song, In the Good Old Football Times, some students Googled, and it was a song to a song In the Good Old Summertime, it says there, which was from a musical copied by Nat King Cole, and they traced it all the way back to 1902 in its origin. So it turned out to be a great example, fortuitously, that I didn't even realize. And they got to see how we can trace back how things have been copied and repurposed over time through this example. Dogs. This is Sideways the dog. I think this was a great example because it's kind of an urban legend on campus at this point. But this little dog pictured here in the 1940s was all over campus. People loved to write articles about him in the student, him or her, we don't know. It's referred to as either one. In the student newspaper, every week for several months, there's a new article about Sideways. Sometimes they have a name attributed with it, like the Kin Hawk. Sometimes they don't. So it's like someone takes a story and builds on it about Sideways wandering off and Sideways returning, Sideways running for student body president, invading a dance, all of these things. So you can kind of see how this story kind of spirals as more and more people add on to it. And then we use some examples from our rare book collection. On the left is recipes and medical preparations. Actually got this from an auction. We didn't know much about it. Probably started around 1715. There's a couple of different names on it. A lot of different handwriting in there. It's got receipts, recipes, medical ingredients for medical salves and things like that. And just like lists of names and things. So a lot of ambiguity there. And then the other is one of our rare books, Agostino Romelli Le Diverse et Artificios Machine. And we looked a little bit about plagiarism there because he had accused some people of stealing his drawings. So thinking about in the early days before copyright existed and how people could copy and repurpose some of these printed drawings from early rare books. So for this activity, the students rotated to each station so they could explore all the items, provide written responses on a worksheet. So I had it set up so they could either write a new comment or response to the question, or they could comment on another student's comment. So in a way, they were answering the questions and creating communal writing as a class. But they were able to discuss issues of ownership, plagiarism, ethics of reusing someone else's work, and the purpose of these communal writings in context of creator and audience. Yeah, so after the class, the instructor told me again, she loved the workshop. I was so nervous. I didn't know if she would like it. And afterwards, she's like, this is great. This is exactly what I'm hoping for. And this was just last spring. So I hope if she's teaching it again, she will bring them back. But she was pleased with the variety of breadth of items that I had selected. I think by selecting items from this wide range of dates collecting areas, the students could gravitate to things that interest them and explore ownership and community contributions to writing across hundreds of years. So in closing, although instruction often feels easier when it is based in specific collections or collecting areas, I found it most rewarding when I can find connections among all of our collections and apply them to broader concepts. This approach also helps sell archival instruction in classes where the course's subject matter doesn't align directly with any of our collecting areas, but it can increase the number of classes and the depth of interaction between students and collections. So even if you don't have collections about anger or communal writing, you can find examples in other areas and use them to teach critical thinking, primary source literacy, and archival research skills. It can take a little more time to research and preparation for these types of classes, and it does require some familiarity with contents of your collections, but it can be more rewarding to make more abstract or out-of-the-box connections across collections to bring joy to yourself and your audience of learners. So I have my email here, but I'll go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Allison. Sideways 28. All right. Do we have any questions, comments, or any other for our wonderful presenters?
I just wanted to shout out to Alison. I really loved hearing your different themes for your classes and everything like that, and how utilizing different things in your collections. I've had that happen a couple times, not quite anger or humor, but I remember one time we actually had a math class. A math professor reached out to us when I was an undergrad, wondering if we had anything in the archives, and we actually were able to find old math problems from the 1800s, and then we allowed the students to view the originals And then we made facsimiles for all of them to use. So then they could do the word problems themselves and everything like that. So it's always fun to hear what other archival instructors are doing with their collections and stuff like that. So just wanted to give you some props. That was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I had actually pulled some old exams that didn't have names on them for that communal writing class, and they looked at exams from the early 1900s and were trying to do some of the math problems. It's very funny.
They were using the old math back then, not the new math, which I don't understand the new math apparently.
I also don't understand. Sorry, Jennifer, I'll say real quick, I also don't understand the new math. But Mylynda, I wanted to thank you for sharing your story, especially about your undergrad student. I feel like we don't often talk about those kind of things, but that is how, similar to how I got into the field, was through a chance, instruction session, and then ended up working in the archives as an undergrad, and I'm still friends with my mentors like 10 years later. So thank you for bringing light to that joyful occasion.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it is very important to, others helped us, and therefore I think it is part of our responsibilities as archivists, as librarians, to help bring about the next generation. I know things are a little hard and difficult right now, and I've had some really hard conversations with my undergraduate students sometimes about, I kind of was introduced with rose-colored glasses to the field, I think, honestly, and I've been trying to be a little bit more realistic with my students in regards to what is going on right now, but a lot of them still want to take on the challenge. They still want to go into the field, which I think is very important, and I'm just very proud of them for still wanting to make that commitment.
As you should be.
We had a student one time ask if we had any collections from the future. And we were like, no. Yeah. I was thinking in terms of abstract questions. We were like, and he was like real mad too that we could not produce any I'm like, that's not what? That's not how this works. But I too was really interested in how to make these sort of abstract concepts into real archival things. So so that was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for such wonderful presentations. I enjoyed the joy that you had in what you've done. So let's go ahead and we'll take for future collections. No, we can't open the 2096 collection. It's forbidden. Sorry, I was reading in the chat because in our collections at Southern, we do have a time capsule collection that cannot be opened until 2096. Now, if some boxes may have become damaged and we can see them, so that's neither here nor there, but it's a secret. I regret all the folding these document boxes. Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. So let's go ahead and we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back here at 10:45 Central, 11:45 Eastern. All right.